Record. Got it. All right, we're recording. Devon, take it away.
Yeah, is it recording?
It's recording.
Okay, it didn't tell us, so.
Oh,
Yeah,
really?
so we are talking about today, we're talking about why someone would hire a trainer when there's all these things like that Mirror app, Tonal, and just a lot of free information on YouTube and the internet. So why someone would hire a trainer when they can get all that information for free.
Okay, have at it.
Well, some of the things that were the first things that came to mind were really like having a training program that's specific to you or to the person. I think a lot of those, whether it's an app training program or whether you're like following what someone's doing on YouTube, it's not necessarily going to be specific to the person that's watching, to their goals, to their body, to their structure, whether they have limitations. They don't know, no one's going to tell them how to work around those specific limitations. So I would say that's really the starting point of like where it would limit you in terms of comparing it to working with a trainer.
Okay, so let me break it down this way. Recently, a client of mine had to hire a junk service, and the junk guys came in and moved a bunch of stuff out of his house. And they're like, "You're lucky your house didn't burn down." And he said, "Why?" He said, "Because you have two complete sets of the Encyclopedia Britannica, one from like 1982 and the other from like 1987, right? Nothing but like just volumes of books. Encyclopedia Britannica apparently burns like high octane gasoline when it lights on fire." The point being is, if knowledge was everything, we'd have a bunch of Albert Einsteins running around. If information was everything, we'd have a bunch of Albert Einsteins running around because the Encyclopedia Britannica has been out since like the 60s or the 50s or whenever it's been out there. Information has always been out there, but accountability, application, and culture are not something you can pick up on the internet. They're not something you can read about. You can read about them in a book, but you certainly can't implement them for real. You need to have a catalyst. And sometimes that catalyst can be you. Sometimes that catalyst can be people in your immediate social circle. Not many people are roommates with Jack LaLanne. So the reality is a personal trainer can become very handy when it comes to those ideas of accountability, cultural implementation. If it was just about information, then everyone would be lean because there's so much information. And you know what? So much information seems on the surface that it contradicts itself, but a good personal trainer understands context. And because a good personal trainer understands context, what they can do is they can say, all right, here's how all this information may be seemingly correct on the surface, but also conflicting on the surface applies directly to you. This guy named Scott Abel always said, you don't make the person fit the program, you make the program fit the person. That's what a good personal trainer does. Unfortunately, there was a guy a couple of years ago in England, and he died. He was a personal trainer, and what happened was he tragically mismeasured the amount of caffeine in his caffeine powder, and he put 5 grams of caffeine in his protein shake, all right, which is like the equivalent of 200 cups of coffee. It almost killed the guy instantly, all right? Unfortunately, people see personal trainers as one giant tragic accident, just someone doing something while they're waiting for their next big career break. When you have a true professional trainer, it's like going to a true professional for anything, right? I hire a plumber to come say I go fix this plumbing problem I told you I have, and I screw it up worse. Well, if I'm going to hire a true plumber, a real professional, I'm going to expect him to come in here and fix it, right? Because he's got the knowledge, skills, and ability to do that. That's what a personal trainer does. When things get beyond you, which they oftentimes do, when you can't just watch a YouTube video to figure out how to fix a leak, then that's where you call in the professional.
Right.
And that's what a professional does, what professionals do. They save you time. Overall, they save you money. And they make everything work a lot better.
Right. Agreed. Yeah, I think what you said, saving you time, sure, you can read all the information on the internet, but you could have one conversation with your trainer and have saved you like 1 to 5 years, if not more years of just reading information and trying to figure out how it even applies to you.
Absolutely.
And then I think another thing is with those, like the apps and stuff is like the like muscle retention aspect. And the
Okay,
fact that
talk to me.
people, like if someone wants to lose weight, like we've talked about in plenty of our videos, like one of the main things they want to get out of their training is muscle retention, as that helps with sustaining that weight loss. And then just in terms of body composition changes or people keeping their muscle as they age. And with those apps, people don't really know on their own how to progress those workouts. A lot of times it's like you just pick like, I want to do the cut workout today. I want to do the burn workout today. Like they have these fun names and you kind of just pick random workouts to do. So it's like, sure, you're getting tired, you're getting sweaty, you're getting sore every time, but you're not really, there's not much progressive overload is encouraged, and people most likely aren't going to know how to progressively overload or do it safely on their own. So I think that's a huge drawback of just having, like, just following someone's video or using one of those apps.
Here's the deal. I just want to make sure we're not coming across here as telling people that somehow personal trainers are the gatekeeper to all weight loss and fitness. We know in the beginning, whether you lift 90% of your 1 rep max, which is a really heavy weight, which most people can't do for more than 3 to 5 repetitions, very heavy weight. Whether you do 90% of your 1 rep max or 60% of your 1 rep max, which you can do like 20 times or more, it's going to make very little difference for the average beginner, or pretty much all beginners, in terms of strength and muscle mass and muscle retention while dieting. In the beginning, it's very simple. I've seen some astoundingly insane workouts. There's a guy I'm following now. It's called Working Things Out. And his workout consisted of seated chest press, pec deck, incline dumbbell fly, dumbbell curl, barbell curl, lat pull down, row, and barbell shrug. And while the guy's been doing this, and now there's a professional, I know you're like, oh my God, this is insane. And every time he does a chest press, his shoulders go like this on the chest press, right? And like 20 days into it, he can't figure out why his shoulder is hurting him. But I don't want to get too into this deal. The reality is that in the beginning, anything works. The problem is we are not, and I've said this before, and you've said this too, we are not a country that has a problem with losing weight. We are a country that has a problem with losing weight, but then we have to keep it off and sustain it long term. And at some point, you got to stop. You got to get off that beginner merry-go-round, the point where anything and everything works. Look, where do those apps really shine? They shine when everything and anything works. Yeah. But that's, again, not the problem. The problem isn't, look, there's 2 things when it comes to obesity. One, we're not going to solve. And that's the fact that it's largely driven by economic status and education. As trainers, we're not going to solve that. But number 2 is, what largely drives it is people will get to a point beyond where anything works and they don't know what to do. And then what you're talking about, where it's just not being this wandering generality that I'm going to do the cut workout one day, the strength workout the next day, the conditioning workout the next day. Once you get past that initial phase where anything works, there's a thing called the rest of your life, right? And that's where if someone invents a program called P7290X, I want to see that program. P90X, that doesn't mean anything because life lasts a hell of a lot longer than 90 days. And they're like, well, I just need a jump start. Okay, great. And the space shuttle needs a lot of fuel to get off the first couple miles off the Earth. But if it doesn't keep going up, it crashes right down to the ground. So that's another area where trainers really come in handy. Yes, in the beginning, get started, especially if you don't have the economic status, which most people who have a weight problem don't, to work with a trainer. Then all of a sudden, these free resources on the internet, the stuff we put out there, is incredibly valuable. But at some point, we've got to recognize people are not having problems losing weight. They're having problems keeping the weight off. And that's really where the trainer comes in handy, is to help you get past that beginner phase. Because guess what? It doesn't take a lot of skill when everything works. Right?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Then it's like you get to a point, and then it's like, if you don't know what to change, then what do you do? Or how to progress the workouts.
Absolutely, for sure. So what were some of the topics relative to personal trainers you think we should cover today? What should we talk about? Should we talk about certification? Should we talk about how to pick a good trainer? What What are people looking for in a good trainer? Any of those topics sound interesting to you?
Probably how to pick a good trainer.
Okay. What do you think?
I mean, I think even if you go, if like speaking to someone who, let's say they're shopping around for a trainer, if they go to the gym and let's say there are like 5 trainers on the floor training their clients, I would say like looking for the trainers who are like interacting with their clients, like they're not watching TV while while their clients' knees are caving in on the leg press. They like there's some level of like personal connection there, but also they're making sure that they're actually getting a workout done and not just like chit-chatting the whole time. And then I think like doing things safely, which I know most people, like you can't just look at a trainer and be like, oh yeah, they're doing things safely. But if it looks like a circus act and the client really looks like they're struggling, maybe that's not the best trainer to go with.
So what you're telling me, Devin, is you shouldn't pick a trainer based on the fact they look like how you want to look.
No,
that's probably not the best criteria.
But that would be important to talk about too.
Right. So if you're built like an apple and you see a trainer who looks like a ruler with breast implants, that's maybe not the sole qualifier, right?
Right.
Right. If you're a guy and you look like who's that purple guy from McDonald's, Grimace, and your trainer looks like an all-pro middle linebacker, that's not necessarily the sole criteria for why a trainer may be good at. They may be good at genetics. They may be good at their own body, but I can't tell you. Maybe I should ask you. So you agree with me on that? That's not necessarily the best way to pick a trainer.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, because I mean, I think what happens a lot is people have good genetics or they're a great athlete, and then they get into personal training because they're just into fitness, but they might not know or be able to help someone else make that lifestyle change and make that physical change.
I had a guy once say to me, why don't you have all your clients doing power cleans and barbell squats and barbell deadlifts and box jumps and bench presses? And I said, well, why would I? And he goes, well, they work well. I said, they work well for you? He said, yes. And I think on the outside looking in, people think because that's what a good personal trainer is. They understand that people are different, and not just physically, which should be enough. It's like, wait, well, that's actually more than enough. The fact that people are different physically and at different capacities. But people are also driven different mentally. I got in an argument about this once. This woman I knew who was a power lifter, and she really was geared towards psychologically, and this is the key word, and physically to lifting heavy weights. And somehow there's never this middle ground, right? It's either you have to be lifting super heavy weights for low reps, or the alternative apparently is doing 20 to 30 reps with ultra light weights and stupid exercises where you're doing a stiff-legged deadlift, a lateral lunge, an upright row, a shoulder press, and a tricep press. You know what I mean? Like those typical shape workouts. Yeah. Like that's how some people look at it. And it's like, well, and you said this with the Devon Men's Health, Women's Health magazine video. Mm-hmm. Look, you don't have to be the next CrossFit Games champion. But if you can just work within a 6 to 12 or 12 to 15 rep range, and you can do some bench presses with dumbbells or a machine and shoulder presses and learn how to squat and split squat, regardless of how you learn to load that, whether it's a dumbbell or a medicine ball. There's a middle ground, right, between the hardcore exercise lunatic and the person who comes to the gym and is completely, the person says, I don't want to lift more than 5 pounds because my arms will bulk up, but they're carrying around a 10-pound baby, mm-hmm. right? There's a middle ground there. And I think a lot of people who are fit don't get that. It cracks me up on that because no matter how long I've been doing this, invariably someone walks into the gym who's super fit, who doesn't understand why trainers train their clients the way they do.
Yep.
And the key operative word is because they're not training like how that person knows. That's why you're a professional. You know how to make something not just work physically, but psychologically for someone else. And if you can't get outside of yourself, then congratulations, you're just a really fit person. One time I heard Magic Johnson, they asked him how to shoot a basketball, and I think I've said this before, he couldn't describe how to shoot a basketball. And he was one of the greatest basketball players of all time. Again, that's why Bill Belichick wasn't Lawrence Taylor, and yet Kenny Tarr will tell you he is the greatest football coach of all time, right? But he wasn't a great football player himself, because there's a difference between being a coach and a player, right? Tony Dungy did both very well. A lot of guys do, but that's very rare. Yeah, I mean, that's what makes a fitness professional. It's not just somebody who's fit.
Right, right. And then on the other end of that, if someone's not like practicing what they preach, I think that's also, I don't know if I would say a red flag, but.
No, do it, Devin. Go out there. This is our video. No, this is like Frank Drebin said, right? At the end of Police Squad, he said, the two problems, the two people don't matter to a hill of beans in this world. But this is our hill, and these are our beans. So this is our video. You say what you want to say, and if people are upset by it, they can go jump in the woke shower and swim and clean the Devon filth off them. What were you going to say? Say it, Devin.
No, my personal opinion is that you should at least have, if you are teaching people how to take care of themselves, how to exercise, maybe in the like diet and lifestyle aspect too, like you should have some degree, like you don't have to look like a fitness model, but you should have some degree of basic habits of regular exercise, of like having a somewhat nutritious diet. Like I think there should be like a basic level of self-care that you should be practicing, and I think that that's a good sign that it's something that you really believe in and that you can help someone else do as well.
Can you give me a specific of example? Because I already have one in my head, but I want to hear, because everyone knows I'll just talk and talk and talk on these things. So I want to hear what you have to say.
A specific example of something
where a trainer's inability to practice what they preached actually wound up shortcoming their client, and in a way they actually admitted that later on, because I have an example of it. But
so an example of how it would hold the client back?
Yeah, like a real world example of where you were a trainer said something to a client, and it turned out that because the trainer didn't practice what they preached, it was actually, for example, if you want to get better at golf, your trainer doesn't have to have a six-pack. But if your trainer understands something about mobility and stability at different parts of the kinetic chain, they can teach you how to be a really damn good golfer. Mm-hmm. It's not necessary. All this idea of golfers as bodybuilders is really starting to backfire now, with all these golfers having all these heavy-duty injuries. They're big hitters like the Dalai Lama, but the reality is they wind up getting injured because golf is a game of elasticity as much as it's a game of strength. So if you have a trainer who can teach mobility and core stability, they may relate more to the client than not, because the client's going to go right into the clubhouse and have a beer at the end of their 18 holes. Mm-hmm. It's not a sport golf clubs don't weigh, say, 50 pounds, right? So it's not like a power lifter who can't lift weights. Do you have any examples of that, though, where you know of in your life, where someone recommended a device, but the reality you knew as a trainer, to quote Arnold, it was the wrong advices because they weren't living it? I don't mean to put you on the spot. It's just that when I get something in my head, I'm like, dude, shut up, let someone else talk. And then once they've said their bit, then you can tell your story.
Well, I guess I'm interpreting your question two different ways. Like, are you talking about like if someone's like a strength athlete or a power lifter giving their like 50-year-old woman?
Devin, you just read my mind, and my head is so big, you're lucky you didn't get lost in there. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, I mean, I think
simple, I guess.
Kind of along the lines of what you were saying about that guy that asked you, like, why don't you train all your clients with the Olympic lifting? Because it's not their goal. I think that with the whole, like, if they're a power lifter and they want their clients to do all powerlifting workouts, maybe that doesn't make sense for the client. And like if the client maybe isn't really like bought into that style of training, or it just doesn't make sense for their structure, and they end up, like, let's say, getting hurt. I think that then if they get injured, that's going to be a huge drawback, because then it's really going to limit what they can do in the gym and how much progress they can make.
I one time had a trainer tell me two things that later this trainer actually came back on, because when they started working with average everyday people, they had to, because they realized that what they were saying was not going to work once the proof had to hit. Proof was in the pudding. I don't know. Once the tires hit the road. I'm not good with those analogies. The trainer had two statements. One is that people should never base their fitness progress or weight loss progress on how their clothes fit. And this guy was pretty famous, so anything he said, the bootlickers were all going to laugh at. And I said to him in the seminar, I said, well, why would you not base that? That's important to people. And he said in the seminar, and at the time he embarrassed me. No, I can embarrass myself. I don't need people to embarrass me. But he's like, well, what? Are you going to let your dryer determine your fitness results? And all the bootlickers in the room are like, oh, that's really funny. You got him. And I'm looking around at all of them, and they're all those like douchebag trainers who show up in like jogging suits to like the fitness seminar. Mm-hmm. And I'm looking at this guy, I'm like, you train athletes, right? I said, you start training average everyday people, and all you in the back can laugh at me all you want. And then a year later, he came out in a seminar, and he's like, oh yeah, I one time had someone say something to me, and then I actually started training average everyday people and realized that the way people's clothes fit is actually a big deal. That it goes beyond what the dryer does in terms of shrinking, or that wasn't his words, right? It's a little too late now, right? My moment of shame in public had already occurred.
Yeah.
But he admitted that, look, right? Like this is actually true. When you work with a population, look, if you're an athlete, because his example was he trains female athletes, Division I soccer players, who complain from doing things like squats and cleans, which are necessary power exercises for that population, that their pants weren't fitting anymore, that their thigh muscles were developing to the point where the skinny jeans weren't fitting. And his answer was, which was perfect for that population, is you're being paid to go to school. This is your job, and this is the byproduct of what you need to succeed at your job. Shut up. You can shrink your legs and wear skinny jeans once you leave college. But while you're being paid to go to school here, you will not wear skinny jeans. He didn't say shop at Lane Bryant, but he might as well, told them to go do that. Right? Shop at Lane Bryant and get a tailor. Bring your waist in because this is what your thighs are going to look like. Mm-hmm. But for the average everyday person who doesn't have those goals, that type of approach doesn't work. Another thing the guy had said once, which he came back on, was that everybody should do chin-ups. And that the only types of people who don't do chin-ups are people who are lazy. And I looked at him and I said, because I'm such a douche, I looked at him and I said, so let me get this right. Do you do chin-ups? And he's like, well, no. And I said, well, why not? He said, well, I got a bunch of injuries. And I'm like, you really don't work with a lot of average everyday people because they're walking piles of injuries, right? They're walking piles of non-Division I gifted body types without favorable tendon insertions on their arms, without favorable lat insertions, without favorable body weight, strength, muscle mass to body fat to weight ratios. Go take the average. I did this once because I was all pumped up on being a strength coach, and the client the next day came in, she couldn't shampoo her hair. She couldn't lift her damn hands over her head because everyone should do chin-ups. And the reality is that it's arm extension. So if it's a back exercise and you're trying to work the lats through the motion of arm extension, why the hell are you picking one exercise as the only exercise to do for every single person? Now, maybe for an athletic population, the reason why a Division I basketball player might do pull downs instead of chin-ups is because they're being lazy. But for the average everyday person, it doesn't even hit the radar screen, right? Lat pull downs are going to do what they need to do as far as maintaining muscle mass for their goal as any crazy exercise you're going to wind up doing with them. So when you said that, I know it comes to people like, oh, well, you can't say that. There's a lot of good trainers. I don't think that was the point. The point being is it does, in a way, it can limit your clients. If you don't understand where your clients are coming from, look, if I hear one more skinny trainer tell their 300-pound client, just start eating boneless, skinless chicken breast and rice and doing walking lunges all over the place, I'm going to flip out, right? Only ripped muscular trainers think everyone should start with only body weight exercises, right? You're going to tell someone who's 50 pounds overweight they should start with push-ups, right? Maybe the best thing for them is to have a pair of 10-pound dumbbells on an incline bench. Right? So now you're not humiliating them. You're actually getting a chance to stimulate the muscle without destroying their body in the first. They just can't do it. So your point's well taken. I wanted to give that example because I think it's very important that people understand that about their trainer.
Yeah. Yeah. So like if you could sum it up, what would you say would be like the top 3 things to look for in a trainer?
Well, the first thing I think you got to be careful of is the concept of certification. understand that most companies require trainers to be certified almost largely through liability. If your trainers are all certified by an official certifying body, the gym has released itself from a great deal of liability. And if you don't think liability is a big deal, I don't know what planet you've been living on, or at least what country you've been living in. Countries need to protect them. Companies need to protect themselves. I know a lot of times I get grief from people who work in commercial gyms barefoot. And I'm like, do you have any understanding of how many times the average commercial gym has been sued by some idiot walking around barefoot who gets injured? Right? And are you going to write that? So I one time heard a trainer say, well, if the gym makes you put your shoes on, that's not a real gym. And I'm like, all right, tough guy, when you're ready to write the multi-million-dollar check to the sleazebag attorney who's going to sue you out the ears because people were walking around with your commercial fitness shoeless, then I'll listen to what you have to say. So understand that certification to a great degree has to do with liability more than anything else. At best, it opens the door to showing someone has a certain level of competency, right? And to some of the average everyday people, they see all those letters and those initials, and that's what they understand. They understand MBA, PhD, DR, DO. They understand acronym initials. In the fitness world, is so many different things work that the certifications don't go as far as say they may go in other areas. But if you said to an MBA who's been doing business for years, would you allow some punk out of college to run your company? They'll say no, because the MBA is just a degree. It has nothing to do with how to actually run a business and manage real people. But certifications is a big thing. Yes, they have some value, but you got to go way beyond that because they mean a lot different things in the fitness industry than they do necessarily to your ability to get results with the trainer. So that's one big thing is the certification game. I'd also say watch out for the online game, and I am literally bashing my head into a wall here because I know you and I have had this discussion in the past. If you want to be successful as a female on the internet, have big butt, have big boobs and a little waist, or be so ridiculously lean that no woman could possibly aspire to be as lean as you are without not having a menstrual cycle for the rest of her life, right? And if you're a guy, be big and jacked and muscular and huge. Lionel Dallas talks about this all the time. I think he says it much more simply. He says, if you're a woman, have a big butt and a tiny waist, and if you're a guy, be big, jacked, and ripped with huge arms. And people will automatically assume in the world of Instagram that you know what you're doing. Right? So that's another danger that people run into online is that environment is so concentrated. It's so few characters, for lack of a better word, like Twitter, that they get a misrepresentation of what it is that you need as far as a trainer is concerned. So those are two big areas that you got to watch out for. You already hit on it with how the trainer looks in the sense of the trainer can't practice what they preach. You got to seriously question what they're doing. But on the online, if the trainer looks tremendous, that really is it's not necessarily a guarantee of anything other than the fact that they know what they're doing for themselves. And you don't even know what that person's hormonal situation is either.
Right.
I mean, I've seen people who go on TRT on hormones have no idea what they're. That's my whole point of my steroid guy video, right? Steroids cover a lot of bases. You can do an awful lot of things wrong and still look good on steroids. So that's really something I think when people are looking at trainers that's something they've really got to take into account is the idea of the concept of certification and appearance. The biggest thing I've always said is you've got to find people who've worked with that trainer before and have had a positive result with them. That's how I found out about my divorce attorney because people had a positive result with them. I didn't go on TV and find my divorce attorney.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, so if you're not going to put something that important in the hands of television or just the internet, don't put your fitness in. And I say to clients all the time, hey, if you like what we're doing, tell people about it. Right. That's a big factor involved. It's you got to be your own Angie's List, for lack of a better word.
Yeah.
All right. I've talked too much. Go, Devon.
Yeah. I think those top three things are like important to look out for. But yeah, and I've had multiple people say to me, like, aren't you worried about these apps coming out and like artificial intelligence? And not really. And I'm sure you can probably say the same thing, that most of the clients that you work with, and this is my experience, most of the clients I work with, they already did that stuff. Like they already did the apps, they did that stuff. And then they got to a point where, okay, now what do I do? Like I need they've gotten past that beginner level to the point where they either need or want something different to get them to that next level.
Listen, when it comes to artificial intelligence, the only thing I'm worried about is one day my Roomba is going to kill me in my sleep. That one thing, that sucker is going to become intelligent and it's going to like come at me. That's it. That's what freaks me out about AI. That some lunatic's going to start using it as a weapon to try and control the world. As far as personal training is concerned, it doesn't look. Let me put it this way. I one time saw a very knowledgeable trainer about 15 years ago write an article that said one-on-one personal training is dead. Right? And he explained all the reasons why one-on-one training will not exist 10 years from now. It was like 30,000 one-hour sessions ago that my career was supposed to end. So there's a lot of money in doom and gloom and the end of the world is coming and this is why this is not going to work. But the value is in the relationship. You cannot have a relationship with a machine. You cannot build trust. Look, one of the biggest issues with clients, and I'll tell the clients this, and trainers need to know this, is a lot of times they feel like they can't be honest about what their real problems are relative to weight loss. And that's only going to come from having a relationship. I don't mean like that, like trainer, you know what I'm talking about, like sexy time relationship. I'm not talking about that stuff. I'm talking about someone you can trust. There are things my clients have told me that they wouldn't tell a therapist, they wouldn't tell their spouse, they wouldn't tell the IRS, and they sure as hell wouldn't tell any type of legal authority. I'm not like I train Al Capone or anything. I'm just being a little dramatic. You can't replace that. So am I concerned about those things? No. I'm more concerned about usually those comments are made by, again, people who don't do this stuff for a living, who don't actually work one-on-one with average everyday people. It's just, no, I wish I could pump it into people's heads how many times I've seen these kind of things come up and they always just wind up falling flat on their face. Because I think that's why people don't succeed in the job. They don't get it. I think one of the reasons why I've done well is that people know I'm not going anywhere. This is my job. This is my passion. This is my profession. And so they know if they buy a 24-pack, I'm going to be there until the end of it. And that sounds like one simple area, but it's a trust issue. It's something that they understand that they can confide things in me, and I'm not going to judge them on it, and I'm going to give them the best of it. And they always know I'm working towards trying to be better than I was the day before.
Yep.
The second you start thinking you know everything, that's a whole nother rabbit hole we could go down. But yeah.
Yeah, I think that's another thing. Like if you're shopping for a trainer, like when you have a conversation with them, like seeing if are they seeking to get better, or are they going to give you, like if you ask them a question, are they going to give you an answer that's kind of like, yeah, whatever, like your question's not important, and like they're not actually going to like seek out what the answer is or point you to someone that can actually help you.
Yeah, I think one of the most frightening things a doctor once ever said to me was, I came into the doctor with a certain situation going on, and the doctor had told me, like, wait a second, I've never seen this before. And it freaked me out, right? Because when you go to the doctor and the doctor's like, wait a second, I've never seen this before. It's like, well, wait, whoa. That's frightening. Like the entire integrated medical structure has never dealt with a situation like I'm dealing with before. That's scary. A good trainer has pretty much seen everything. The issue is, how do I apply a workable solution to this individual? I think that's another big part of it when you're looking for and working with a trainer. And if they don't have the knowledge, being able to say, I don't know, let me go figure it out, or let's find someone who within their scope of practice can.
Yes.
That's a huge part. Because if you're trying to find an answer for everything, especially sometimes with situations that maybe don't have answers, you're going to start relying on some pretty wacky alternatives. You're going to start telling people that diet soda, even though it has no calories in it, is causing them to gain weight, when the reality is they may very well be in a calorie deficit for 12 days, but on the 13th, 14th day, they've blown that calorie deficit in one big binge. That I've seen. I've seen people eat next to nothing for 7 days, 8 days, 9 days in a row. and eventually they break and they blow the calorie deficit and then some on the 7th day. And next thing you know, they've gained weight that week. Like that I've seen. And I've seen them feel so guilty or been so oblivious or so ashamed of it that all they'll tell you is, no, I'm in a calorie deficit. No, I'm in a calorie deficit. No, I'm in a calorie deficit. And if you sit back and you probe and you ask questions, you'll get them to be able to admit it to themselves. You need that. That's the kind of trainer you need. You need someone you can trust. You need to know you have someone that's going to be blabbing your information all over the world. Because a great deal of the training, like I said, is the relationship. It is the ability to come there and get as much of the stress out. It is the physical exercise in. Yeah, I think that's a big factor. So we have 3.5 minutes left.
Yes.
Is there anything, Devon, that you want people to know, besides the fact you are a personal trainer and you are available for consultation in business? Is there anything you want people to know about personal training, either with you or a trainer in general?
I think one huge aspect of fitness and staying consistent that people don't talk about a lot is like that community aspect of like being in a gym and just being around other people who are all there to better themselves and all have similar goals. I mean, whether you have different fitness goals, but still working towards some sort of, whether it's health or performance improvement, I think being around other people and being in their energy and interacting with them and kind of like feeding off of their mindset in a way can really, like, I think people don't talk about enough how important that is if you really want to make your health a big part of your lifestyle.
I agree. I think that's beautiful. There's a gym I'm at where there's a guy who smells, but he's our smelly guy, and he's part of the cast of characters, right? Who works out at the gym. There's a culture to all of these things. It's basically like how a church, a synagogue, or a mosque is, right? The prayers are the prayers, but it's the community that you're a part of. And I remember years ago, someone said, well, COVID is going to destroy the gym industry. And it has, but more for an economic inflationary loss of revenue thing, not because people saw a flaw in the gym industry. And people are like, oh, well, no one wants to be in, Devon's butt sweat on the machine, which is debatable. There's some pretty, bizarre people out there. But the one thing everyone has told me is they miss the gym. They miss the people there. It was a big driving factor. Look, CrossFit's all about their boxes and their They eat, they're all about their community. And the crazy, Rogue wouldn't exist if it wasn't for CrossFit, right? Because it was almost like how as a Jew I wear a yarmulke, not all the time, but you get the point. CrossFit people wore Rogue. It was like their yarmulke, right? It was their crucifix necklace they wear around the neck if you're a Christian, right? It was part, that was their big selling point, is it was part of it. You weren't just doing an exercise, you were joining a cohesive group. Yep. That we're all in this for the same thing. And, I think the whole COVID thing, what it really showed me was when I first came back, when the gym I work at opened on September 8th, and I always had never thought, all right, we have people, they work out, yada, yada, yada. No one looks like Arnold Schwarzenegger. But the crazy thing is that I never realized how much muscle people were carrying. So I saw them, they came back from COVID and all that muscle was gone.
Yeah.
So sometimes you lose that because you're in a group of other people who are carrying moderate amounts of muscle mass, and the other group usually have huge amounts of muscle mass, and you don't get it. So I think that's a big factor, is being in the gym, being part of a group, the people who keep saying, oh, well, now Peloton's here, gyms are going to die, the democratization of fitness. Yeah, until the rock tape comes out and you have to go see the orthopedist for 3 new surgeries